Welcome to our November monthly member meeting. It's almost December. Can you believe that we've been doing this for 11 months? I hope it's been going well for you because it's exciting for me to see that we've come this far from the first time when it was suggested that we start this. It's just exciting. We will have Wordly as usual for those that need it. If you do, please just say it in the chat and Jen will help you. An update on our members. We have 122 member organizations in 58 countries. I think we will be seeing more coming in, especially after Congress, but guys, please just continue to speak to organizations on the ground that do work on CRC. Thank you. We have our agenda, and our October featured speaker is Faisal Jacobs. He was battling to join us. I think he's in now. And we'll have our open forum and for questions and challenges and to share ideas for collaboration and global trends. And we'll announce next month's featured speaker, and we'll close, I hope, on time. Thanks, Jen. For our internal updates, Nicole is here to share what we are doing on social media now, and if it's a little bit on Congress. Thank you, Nicole.
Thanks, Tumi, and congratulations, Tumi, because you're right that this is now your 11th monthly member meeting. And you really are the speaker. You're the heart and soul of MMM. So, or as you say, what do you say? How do you call it?
Triple M.
Triple M. Sorry. So we've got all of our different acronyms here. So I just wanted to reflect, and I'll ask Andy and Candace to jump in as well. So I want to thank our member organizations, those that are joining now for this live meeting, but also those who are watching the replay, that we really appreciate everybody who helped out by promoting Congress. I saw every single person who was sharing it on social media. We had some real champions doing that, and we thank you. And also seeing you in the chat. What was really exciting was that we also had a lot of new faces that participated in Congress and that have reached out. But we really thank you, our members, for helping to spread the word. So maybe I'll just ask, if you were able to attend Congress, maybe just drop a comment in the chat. And I will ask Candace and Andy to share a little bit about their reflections of Congress 2025. Candace?
Good morning. I would say my reflection is that I hope that everyone felt that it was personal, felt that it was relatable to the work that they do and the things that they have seen and heard on the ground. And that for those that attended Bringing Congress last year, saw themselves reflected in the feedback that they gave to us, which was, that this was something that we needed to talk about more and needed more information. And the resources that we gave and the blueprint that we shared of the various activities that people have been doing, the creativity to make a difference in their community. And I hope that you found especially the resource for cancer registry helpful, and impactful for those in your organization that may want to have a career as a registrar or become a registrar because it's helpful, because you don't have it in your area. So I thank you so much for your feedback. It was definitely the roadmap that was utilized to help form this year's Congress, and looking forward to continuing that for 2026. And thank you.
Yeah, and I would just add, I thought it was a fantastic Congress. I thought it really brought home the whole idea that we've been talking about, that not being counted is a very personal thing. It's not just a data issue. It's a very, very personal thing that affects everything. It affects government resources. It affects advocacy. It affects your ability to access care and medicines and treatments and screenings and testings. And So really being counted was a fantastic theme. And I think it really works across all diseases. And I'm hearing that some companies are sharing internally with their teams, even if they're not in colon cancer, because the takeaways were just universal and really, really hard hitting and important. So great job, team. Great job presenting everything, Candace, and all of you putting it all together. And of course, you can see on the screen here that we have selected next year to be in person, and we will be in Nairobi, Kenya, November 5th and 6th. So mark your calendars. We're going to all go to Africa next year, and Tumi promises it's going to be warm next November in Kenya, and lots of animals on our safaris. So we'll see you in Kenya. So over to you.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, just to share, for Congress, Candace was on camera, so she had, you can see here on the slide that this was the team that was in person in order to bring you the virtual event. We all got to wear our comfy GCCA t-shirts. Candace had to be dressed up from the waist up, and she was on camera, so I really appreciate that. As part of the crew behind the scenes, we just were monitoring the chat. Jen and Candace had a really, really tough job. Jen was controlling all things Zoom. So I thank you guys. Just to recap for those of you that may not be aware, last year we had our first in-person Congress, and that was in Cape Town, South Africa. And we did that in partnership with the World Patients Alliance. And so we're doing that model again. So our conference will be November 5th and 6th, and then the World Patients Alliance's conference will be the 7th and 8th. So the people who come from GCCA, you'll have 2 days of intensive colorectal cancer education, networking, and learning, and then we send you to the World Patients Alliance's conference, which is for all disease states. So a really great opportunity to meet advocates from around the world. And we're really excited. So we are just really starting to kick off the planning. As Andy mentioned, we just determined the location and the venue. We do have many organizations that are members that are in Nairobi. And so if you are in Nairobi, expect to hear from us. We're trying to figure out exactly what our plans are, but we are very much looking forward to coming to your country. Okay, just some other quick updates, and I want to get to our main speaker. But I just wanted to share that I think yesterday we kicked off our tumor-sidedness campaign, which is a part of our Know Your Biomarker program. It's on our homepage. If you go to globalcca.org, you'll see that. My request is if you could please share this campaign on social media. We're really trying to bring awareness that the location of your tumor matters. And in addition to wanting people to understand the difference of for treatment options, for understanding maybe likelihood of recurrence, of how serious the cancer is, another reason that I'm asking for you to be a partner in sharing this is that we've found that tumor-sidedness is a great way to engage people to start to understand what biomarkers are. Once you start talking about things like MSI high, KRAS, HER2, it's very complicated. One thing that, technically your tumor's location is a biomarker because a biomarker is simply information about your health. So anything like cholesterol, your weight, your blood pressure, these are biomarkers. When you look at cancer biomarkers, it gets very complicated very quickly. But from what I've seen, people kind of get it. Oh, okay, if it's on the left side, it's different than if it's on the right side. So we found that this is a great intro to engaging the community on biomarkers. So I just ask if you could please share this campaign. And if you have any questions, please let me know. And then my last call out is that speaking of social media, I did want to just pause quickly and ask that if you're not following us on social media, please do. These are the different sites that we're on. So LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Threads. And the last thing I want to say is if you can, drop your social media handles in the chat for us, because I don't know that we're following all of our members, and we absolutely want to be. Following you on social media is one way that we know what's going on. It's one aspect. It's how Jen gets a lot of the information that she shares in the monthly e-newsletter for our members. So if you could please share your handles with us on the different platforms so that we can check and make sure we're following you. And I know it's tough, right? The algorithm is really tough on the different platforms. They literally make it so that you're very much incentivized to do paid ads. So if you do see our posts, please like, comment. We will do the same for you because we've got to break through the noise so that we are reaching people on social media. And I will just say the very, very last thing I'll say is I just had a conversation with a patient story that we'll be sharing in January that's about knowing your biomarker. And I'll share with our members kind of the spoiler alert. If the wife of the survivor, now survivor, no evidence of disease, if the wife had not been on social media and seen a post that talks about a toxicity biomarker, this man would have died. And it was because a member organization was advocating, and it wasn't even on their own page. They were in another group and they asked a question asking if anybody had this biomarker testing for this specific toxicity biomarker. And it ended up literally saving this man's life. So I want to say that sometimes I know it's disappointing. We work really hard on social media posts, and I'm not just saying we, all of you, right? Sometimes you make this big post and you're like, oh, this is going to go viral or people are going to love this. And then you see like 2 likes. You're like, what the heck, you know? But I just want to say that I remembered when I got off the Zoom with this family and I was talking to them, I just thought like, you know what? Literally every post matters. We've got to just continue to be loud and share, and you never know because your post could make the difference. So I will stop there and just thank you so much for everybody. I really, my heart was so warmed by seeing all of the partnership this month in everybody helping to try to bring a large audience to our Congress. So thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Our next speaker now is a featured speaker, Faisal Jacobs. He is from the South African Society of Stomates. They look at a holistic approach to ostomy care by bridging the gap between the public and private sectors while advocating for the rights of fellow ostomates throughout the country. Faisal is here today to share with us the work that he does and the plight of the ostomy community in South Africa. Over to you, Faisal.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you so much again for the opportunity and the platform to share the work that we are doing here at SAS. As Tumi explained, my name is Faisal Jacobs. I'm a colorectal cancer survivor for 9 years now, so again me. And I have a permanent colostomy. I'm also the co-founder of our organization called SAS. So SAS is a registered non-profit organization. It's driven by ostomates, and as we say, it's by ostomates for ostomates. And our objective really is to excuse me, to create an holistic approach to ostomy care, and also bridging the gap between the private sector, as Tumi mentioned, and the state sector. And what we are finding is that people are hungry to be able to support, but not enough is known about what a stoma is, and I think more importantly, living with a stoma. I'm going to fly through the objectives of SAS at this point. Later on, we're going to unpack it a bit more. But the first objective that we have is to enable and promote fair and specialized access to ostomy care. And we do believe that it's a speciality that is needed. The next objective is to ensure that ostomates have the freedom to choose the product that is best suited for their specific needs. And then capacity building. There's a huge shortage, and again, we'll speak about this a little later. But South Africa, as an example, we have less than 100 qualified stoma nurses, and that is across both the public and the private sector clinics in the country. And yeah, it's just not enough there. And then the biggest and probably the most difficult one is lobbying and advocating the Department of Health, the health ministries, the nursing councils to recognize stoma therapy as a specialty, but more importantly, to set a basic minimum standard. It's something that there isn't in this country. It takes the popular diseases and conditions like HIV, T endorsed treatment plan, but there is no such thing in existence for the ostomy patient. So what we are saying and what we are seeing through our lived experience, ostomy care, the analogy I like to use is like a puzzle. Now you buy a 1,000 piece puzzle and you have a reference picture, which is usually the boxes covered in terms of what this picture is going to look like. And we don't have that for ostomy care. The surgeons work in isolation from the nurses, work in isolation from the dietitians, the rehab specialist, and nobody's really speaking to each other. And the patient is falling through the cracks and very much forgotten. And some horror stories that we'll share with you guys a little later. So before we jump into the lived experience of ostomates in South Africa, and as I mentioned, I'm going to do a lot of parallels with the rest of Africa. I thought it's apt that we start with a little bit of quizzes, just to get an understanding, and I think to a degree it will prove somewhat of the point. So if we can go to the first quiz, please, Jen. And if memory serves, it is, who knows what a stoma is? Bill Person. Here we go. So everybody can take a moment and just choose your answers. A stoma basically is a surgically created opening on the abdomen that allows the body's waste, so that'll be your feces or the urine, to be expelled into a pouch, diverting the normal or the natural pathway, which is either the anus or the vagina or penis, for the man to expel the urine from. The next question is, why would people get a stoma? So if you could give a reason or a few reasons as to why somebody would have a stoma. Then we can go to the next slide. Look us up. So colorectal cancer, birth defects, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, something that happens often on the African continent is trauma from gunshots, or what is happening a lot is the motorbike accidents, the motorcycles. People are coming off and there's trauma that happens to the abdomen, and very much the surgeries are done to repair the bowel. And in those instances, the stomas are temporary. Could we have the next slide, please? Sorry, one more that is happening more and more often is the birth defects with children. So those are babies born without an anus. So then, depending on the severity of the condition, it could take anywhere from 6 months to 6 years before they have normal fun. So the next question is, what are the 3 most common types of stomas? There you can see the poll quiz up. You can select your option. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So it's the colostomy, urostomy, and ileostomy. So the colostomy it's coming from the colon, the ileostomy from the ileum or the small intestine, and then the urostomy is from the kidneys. Anybody want to take a guess as to how many colon cancer survivors are treated with a permanent or a temporary stoma?
Basil, is this question asking for like globally or in Africa? Because I think the numbers are different.
I had the same question.
It's a global question, and I'm going to touch on your points related to Africa. Then if we can go to the next slide. As much as 35% of ostomates, colorectal cancer survivors are treated with a permanent or temporary stoma. Africa, it's predicted to be a lot higher than that. The biggest reason why we don't have accurate figures, and it speaks to a lot of the problems that we are having and what we as SAS are fighting for, is there's no data that supports it. I think there's a big problem when it comes to pathology results in Africa, whether it's a delay, a lack of skill or facility, but very often the surgeries are performed without having the confirmation, pretty much just being reported as bowel obstruction. And in most instances, it's proving to be cancerous. The surgeons feel that way, but in the absence of pathology, they got to call it bowel obstruction. And again, one of the things that we are fighting for here is we need that registry, because with that type of numbers, it speaks to an organization like GCCA going in there and motivating for colorectal cancer screenings, because the numbers are huge. And we know that globally, colorectal cancer instances are increasing. I think it's as much as 3% per annum. So it's only going to get worse, and we need to do something. Yeah, the big question, are ostomates disabled? Thank you very much for that. And I think both sets are right. And I know it's a contradiction. I don't see myself as disabled, but I am lucky enough to have access to this little bag, this pouch. It allows me to move around. It allows me to live my life. Without that, we are disabled. If you have a look at the graphics on the left on the slide, you have a mixed martial arts fighter. You have an entire rugby team in the UK, all have stomas. And these are full contact. Myself, as an ostomate, I've run 4 marathons, 22 halves, as well as a triathlon, all with a bag attached to my side. But none of that would be possible without access to the pouch. And to prove the point, and then it's a video, so you can go again. I want to introduce you to Asanda. Asanda finds herself in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. It's one of the provinces here. And Asanda is using a plastic packet and electrical tape to fashion a stoma pouch. Now, I can guarantee you that nobody in this meeting, and I don't know many people who would, and I'm including myself here, to sit next to Asanda on a bus, in a taxi, in a meeting room, because Asanda is going to smell, and she's not going to be smelling very pleasant. So without this, Asanda is disabled. Without access to the pouches, you're opening yourself up to a whole host of challenges. I want you all, we all know babies. We've all either had a baby or helped look after a baby. And one of the key things we do not leave a nappy on a baby for too long. And that is because the waste is going to eat away at that skin. And this is exactly what is happening with the cylinder. As you can see, the skin is starting to excoriate. There's a little bit of blistering that is happening. And left untreated, it becomes worse. And I never ever in my life thought I would see somebody in an ICU ward on a morphine drip because of fecal burns. It can get really, really bad. If we can get the next slide, please. Asanda's situation is not unique, and not just in South Africa, but across Africa. People are left having to fashion stoma pouches. The gentleman on the left, he actually has 2 stomas. He sadly he passed away from his cancer, but he missed a whole year of university because he didn't have access to pouches. The second gentleman, we happened to meet him at a state sector hospital, and he came in there desperate. He's a laborer. He works in a building trade. He's a bricklayer. They were working outside, and he got kicked off the job site because he was smelling. People are using extra tapes, etc., to make their pouches last longer. And in the absence of the pouches, the skin is taking a beating. What we are saying is, and South Africa, and even parts of Europe, ostomy care is in crisis, and it's a humanitarian crisis, and it is getting worse. And if we just looked at the colorectal cancer figures, and the increases of this happening, it's only going to get worse if we don't act now. So I'm going to be sharing some stats, and we're going to focus on one condition, one of many conditions that can affect an ostomate. So the first stat I want to share is that 70% of ostomates surveyed by SAFs find themselves on the unemployment line. Of that 70%, 80% are between the ages of 25 and 54 years old. So these are patients or people that should be contributing to the fiscal coffers, but instead they find themselves applying for disability grants, unnecessarily so, because as we've seen in some of the images and the foolish marathons and halves and triathlons that I've done, we're more than capable of living full productive lives. But they're trying to get onto disability grants. Technically speaking, we are not disabled, so many aren't getting it. And that is leaving them even further debilitated, not being able to provide for themselves. The next slide, we speak to a condition that's happening often, and that is one of malnutrition. So what we are finding in the state sector in South Africa, patients do get pouches. Often it's in the incorrect pouch, or it is as little as 2 pouches to last them for a month. That's like me telling you have 2 sheets of toilet paper, make it last for the month. And what patients tend to do is not eat and not drink, because they're under the impression that by not doing this, there's not going to be an output, which means the pouch is going to last longer. Well, I'm not going to have, that many leaks. So if we just focus on malnutrition and forget any of the others, what we're looking at showing you here is the cost of no action. So when the patients are getting the incorrect pouch or no pouches at all, one of the biggest challenges that they face is wound breakdown and the poor integrity of the peristomal skin. So the peristomal skin is the skin around the stoma where your pouch will actually fit onto. When they break down, they're not going to heal very quickly. We know with a baby, they get a bit of a nappy rash, you add your creams, and within a day it clears up. For us, it's very much the same thing. But when you're malnourished, that regeneration doesn't happen that often. So this leads to infections, delayed healing, and in the instances, as I mentioned, hospitalization, where patients are being treated for infections, needing now to get antibiotics and all sorts of treatment, and specialist or specialized, more specialized stoma product to allow that pouch to stick on the broken skin, on the moist, wet skin. So all that just to save, on average, 1,500 Rand for on ostomy supplies. So we mentioned people aren't eating as well. So if you take an ileostomy patient, so for those of you who understand the ostomy world, ileostomy patients, I call them the angry patients. They have the angry stoma. With a colostomy, I need to empty my pouch between 1 and 2 times a day. For an ileostomy patient, between 8 and 12 times per day. So for them, it's like having permanent diarrhea. So when you're not eating and not drinking, dehydration is a huge risk for these patients. So when you have dehydration, you have hospitalization because of fluid loss, salt loss, which could lead to kidney failure. And as I said, they're now hospitalized. They need to go into drips and treatments, rehydrations, etc. And again, all this can be avoided just by spending 8,500 Rand on that patient. So muscle waste is another impact that happens when it comes to malnutrition. And muscle waste is extremely important for an ostomate. As an ostomate, we are already prone to developing what is called a peristomal hernia. That's the bulges. If you go back to the pictures with the lady with a white tape around her, she has a bulge or a hernia. Again, you're going to need specialized product, but the bulge happens because there's a weakness in that abdominal wall. 80% of ostomates are going to develop a peristomal hernia within the first 2 years. But when you add malnutrition to this and the muscle waste that's associated with it, that number's it's only increasing. And again, all because we are trying to save 1,500 Rand a month in the state sector. The next slide, please. That one, again, it just speaks to the compromised immune system. And again, putting the patients at greater risk of infections. One of the questions I have, and I'm trying to find someone help me answer that one, is we know that there are certain diseases that are spread via feces. So what is that impact, especially when you look at the townships within South Africa, where people are soiling themselves because they don't have the appropriate, they're leaking all over the place. So if they are moving around, what is the risk to the greater community there? And then the final, or the next slide, please. It speaks to the psychosocial impact on this patient, the distress. I often share a story of a wife that I met, who said to me, "I really wish I met you 6 months ago. 6 months ago, the surgeons told us the surgery is going to change your husband's life." And they weren't kidding, dead. For 6 months, he tried committing suicide, and last week I buried him. The stories of a mother who has 2 daughters, 2 and 4 years old, and the 4-year-old saying, "Sis, mommy, you stink. Go away." We are being stripped of our dignity by not giving pouches. The challenge that we are facing is not just not giving access, it's holistic. It's hitting the patient on every level of the Maslow hierarchy pyramid or the scheme of needs. Forget what it's called now. I just lost that. But it's the psychosocial, it's the economic, it's the community. People are isolating. It's hitting us on so many levels. And this brings us back to the objectives that we are speaking about. The journey for a colorectal cancer survivor undergoing chemotherapy is very different to a Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis disease patient that also has a stoma, and is very different to somebody who's had chemo. We need an holistic approach. We need a multi-faceted team that includes not just the surgeon, and surgery is just the first step. Surgery is not the healing. Surgery is not the treatment. Surgery is just the first step in what this patient needs to live their life. We need a nurse that knows what he or she is doing. We need a dietitian that can help support the needs of the patient. Because again, if you have your surgery before chemo, chances are when you get chemo, there's going to be weight loss. And with that weight loss, the pouches needs to change. And the dietitian needs to know this and ensure that there's no further breakdown of the wounds, which we've touched on. So it's really a multifaceted approach in terms of taking care of these patients. So the next slide, we speak to having access to products that suit the individual needs. And yeah, I want to do a little bit of a another little bit of I usually, it's a lot easier in person, but if we can get the next slide, you see I've seek to pair the spectacles. So the function of spectacles is to help us see better. Nicole, if you were wearing spectacles, you and I would not be able to interchange our specs. You want to give me your version as to why it won't work for us? Well, I take a sip of water.
Because we likely have different prescriptions, or one of us could have astigmatism, which I understand makes like one lens is different from the other. So even you wouldn't be able to change like the lenses from left to right. Is that right? I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's for sure. I mean, someone may need multifocals, and then there's monofocals and bifocals. The frames may not suit our faces or fit our faces. And stoma pouches is no different. It is based on the body profile. It is based on things like finger dexterity. So this is a one-piece pouch, which you'll probably use for somebody that's got arthritis in their fingers. It's a lot easier than a two-piece system that you need to have clicked on. So there's so much that we need to take into consideration that we have to get past the one-size-fits-all approach, and even worse, looking for the cheapest pouch. A phenomenon that is growing here in South Africa is the advent of the likes of Temu, Amazon, where all sorts of things can get purchased from, and there's a flood in the market of these pouches coming out of China. They stick to you for plus 10 days. But when you remove or change that pouch, you're also removing several layers of skin. And it's really causing more damage than it is causing harm. So we need to make sure that patients have access to the pouching system that suits their individual needs. There's a huge shortage of skill. I may have mentioned a little earlier that in South Africa, there's less than 100 qualified stoma nurses in the country. Now, we do not know for sure how many ostomates there are in the country, let alone globally. So the focus right now is South Africa. But we anticipate there to be around 820,000 ostomate patients. And we've been getting little bits and scraps of data from all sorts of different pools and looked at trends globally where some good tracking is happening and tried to compare it to what is happening in South Africa. And if we are right at 820,000 ostomates in the country with less than 100 qualified stoma nurses, you are looking at more than 8,200 patients to one nurse. And that's just not working, and for obvious reasons. So we need to do a lot of capacity building in terms of encouraging nurses to take up this profession. And at the moment, with it not being seen as a specialty, the nurses, and I suppose rightly so, why must I go and do that kind of work if I'm not going to get paid for it? That's the reality. The whole passion that was behind nursing, a lot of it, if we're honest, it's been lost. I'm not saying every nurse is that way, but that is the harsh reality. And what's even more scary, with less than 100 qualified stoma nurses in the country, 80% of those nurses are within 10 years of retirement. I'm 52 right now, so that means by 62, my chances of getting a good stoma nurse is reduced even further than what it is right now. So it's really something that we need to address. And then it's to encourage and the Department of Health, the health nursing councils, to set those best practices. And as I mentioned a little earlier, to provide a minimum standard of care. The likes of HIV and AIDS, TB, etc. There is a Department of Health endorsed treatment plan. There's no such thing for stoma care. So we say that, well, the World Health Organization reports that every citizen has the right to the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health. And it's seen as a basic human right. Most constitutions across the world speaks to exactly the same thing. It's there, it's enshrined, it's embedded. But sadly, because of the lack of data, I believe, it's not being followed through on when it comes to the stonewall patient. And as I hope that I've shown, is that without the proper care, without access to the product that we need, we're not just failing on a clinical level, but one of the other things enshrined with the likes of the World Health Organization, United Nations, and constitutions across the globe is dignity. We are stripping patients of their dignity. How do we bring these puzzle pieces together to get the picture that we see, that we need to see? We believe that to get equitable healthcare, ostomy care, we've first got to acknowledge the fact that equity in the US is very different to equity in Uganda, is very different to equity in South Africa. So we need to understand what the needs are in these respective countries, because there's so many different variables that come into play. It's skill in terms of clinicians, whether it's a surgeon, whether it's a nurse, whether it's a rehab specialist. So how do we get there? We believe the immediate priorities is to improve access to ostomy care. One of the biggest barriers I think there is taxes. If you think in some countries on the African continent, as much as 55% tax is applied onto ostomy pouches coming in. And I think what we need to look at doing is how do we reclassify the stonewall pouch? Because it's seen as a medical appliance. It's not a pacemaker. It isn't. It's when you think of appliance, you think of a luxury. It's not that. This is a human necessity. And how do we make it more affordable to come into the country? Some people are paying as much as $60 a pouch on the African continent. That's $60 US, which is ridiculous. We need a lot of pilot programs that centers around collecting data. And the data is going to help us build models, both for tertiary as well as district level hospitals and clinics, that'll help us inform and in the longer term, help us integrate ostomy care as an essential service, which it is, because you can perform the surgery, but if you're not going to take care of the patient after, the comparison I like to draw here is when a cancer patient is diagnosed with late-stage cancer and there's a 15% chance that chemotherapy or radiation is going to help, the oncologist conversation goes around and enjoy what is left of the time that you have. That quality of life conversation happens. So we really have to ask the stonewall patient the same question, but slightly differently. You can have the surgery, it'll save your life, but it will probably strip you of your dignity and it'll strip you of your humanity. And then also finally, I believe we need to have greater cross-border collaboration, especially facing the shortage of skilled nurses, skilled surgeons that can even do reversals. Because if you think of reversals as one of the reasons, the temporary stomas aren't being reversed. I've met patients who have had a temporary stoma, and keep in mind that this should be there for 6 to 8 months.
No, I was just going to say, this was just an amazing presentation. I've learned so much, and I just think we all need to work together to address this problem. I love the idea of the registry. I just can't believe what these people are dealing with. And I wonder if communications with the manufacturers in China and other places can be increased to sort of fix this problem of getting these things at a lower price but a higher quality.
Well, this was something that we discussed at Congress and talked about, once we started hearing about these challenges, even in Nigeria, was like, how do we connect them to, is there anything being done globally with some of the ostomy supply companies? And I think one of the issues here that's happening here is that is classified as a medical device.
Yeah.
And that's the problem, because it's more, like I said, it's more than that. And it's a quality of life. It is it's a necessity, because you can't move through life without it. So I think one of the challenges that we're having here in the US is the same thing as changing the classification. So how do you change the regulatory classification? How do you advocate for that? And who would you advocate to? Because we know it would be the FDA here. We also know that it would be Medicare, Medicaid, and all those things, but who do we advocate for globally for this classification change? It brought up some great points too about dietitians. I think all of us who have struggled with colon cancer has struggled with the fight of dietitians. Fruits and vegetables, and eat healthy. And it's like, hello, I don't have a colon, so I can't eat healthy without staying at home and running to the bathroom all day. It is as if the dietitians don't really understand that the diet for a colon cancer patient is totally different. And so there's more education that's needed in terms of, hey, you can't push fruits and vegetables. And even with protein, we're all protein deficient because there's only certain types of proteins that we can have. And I know for me, for a long time, I couldn't eat any type of meat because it would cause me to have a bile blockage. So that's a protein. But then when I got sick in the hospital, that was the first thing that they said, we need to get you animal protein. So it just depends. So there's so many, it's a complex problem that's happening within this space that no one seems to know how to deal with. And I don't think, honestly, that no one is really putting in a lot of time and dollars in trying to understand.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're very right, Candice. I experienced that as well with my diet. The worst thing is the availability of a dietitian to actually engage with you on these matters. But anyway, I think we are over our time. Faisal is gone. He got cut off. He sent me a message. He's struggling to connect back on. So I think we can move on to our next month's featured speaker. She's Mila Toledo. She's the chair of Patient Advisory Committee for Digestive Cancers Europe and an active member of the Youth Cancer Europe. And she will share a lot of the work that they do. Youth Cancer Europe say they are powered by lived experience and they're driven by change. So I'm eager to hear what Mila has for us next month. I hope you will be able to join us. Let's hear what the youth is saying. I think we've come to the end of our meeting. Thank you all for attending, and bye-bye.
Thank you.